Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of For the Fans. With this time around, it is after the draft. It's been almost a full week right after the draft, and we kind of seen a lot of teams start to come down with their new players, make a few more moves, and kind of see who they all picked up in everything, including the undrafted free agents that were available after the draft.
Yeah, that's right. Originally, when we were planning on doing this episode, we were going to be having a little bit of it, be a little bit of a game challenge or something like that, a little bit of a competition between Shane and I as far as who got the most predictions right in the first round when it came to drafts. We're obviously not going to do that because I think I only got like six right, and I got more right than Shane. So there's almost no point in doing it. There's really almost no
Yeah,
point in doing it because ooh, yeah, there were a lot of surprises, which we will be going over tonight.
which I mean, I think when we were breaking down, because we watched about the first half of the draft where we were just on our Discord and talking to each other throughout the draft, and I think we were literally just saying they were like, okay, so we figured that this was going to happen, we just didn't know who exactly was going to go there, and some of them just I still don't understand why they picked certain people over others.
Yeah, which is going to be a part of our subject as far as what we're talking about tonight with our post draft coverage of the NFL. Um, Before we get into that main part, though, talking about the draft in and of itself and each team and where they're at now, because of that, we do still have, as we always start out with each and every episode, a little bit of news that we go over with. And these two, personally, I find them really interesting. So we'll get off with the first one, which is Trent Williams, who's been an embattled tackle for with the Washington Redskins for the longest time. Feels that the Redskins have treated him unfairly and whatnot, has been traded to the NFC defending champions, San Francisco 49ers.
And all honesty, I think that's a big, strong, good move on the 49ers part because they're getting a really solid player in Trent Williams to come out of what seems to be a completely defeated NFC East to go over to the NFC West and play for a team that almost won the Super Bowl.
I mean, Trent Williams, he's a Pro Bowler on multiple occasions. He hasn't been the last little while due to a contract holdout, and also because he actually had he had some cancer recently that he had to have removed, and that is kind of actually what led to a little bit to his issues that he had with the Washington Redskins. But you're right, Shane. I mean, him going to the 49ers, that's going to be a good situation for him. He's going to be on a great team. And he's a really good player too. I was reading when the trade was announced, they that news was broken to Rams coach Sean McVay, who actually used to work with the Washington Redskins. And when McVay found that out, he said on air something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, thanks for reminding me that I need to go have a few more beers," because he knows he's going to have to play Williams twice in the year now. I mean, that NFC West, that place is getting stacked and challenging. I feel for him. I really do.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago the Rams were in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, and I feel like they've fallen so far. But it's not even that they've fallen very far. It's just the NFC West is so strong and so competitive with the 49ers and the Seahawks both there, just constantly fighting each other. We look at it as like, oh, the it's gonna be the 49ers or the Seahawks, but we gotta remember that the other teams there are also very competitive.
That's correct. The Cardinals can definitely be up and coming, and the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, come on, they're only 2 years removed from their Super Bowl trip.
They can't be that far gone already.
We'll have to see. That's
And
something we're going to be getting into this evening.
they didn't have as bad of a time as the Jaguars when they were one play away from the Super Bowl. They haven't sunk that far, so I think there's still hope for them.
Oh, at some point, you're going to be an old man with your grandchildren, still embittered about that AFC Championship
No,
game.
no, I'm gonna be an old man still telling my kids about, yep, that was the time we almost made it to the Super Bowl. We've never been. Still waiting.
Yeah, I'm sure I will know that feeling as well.
But let's
All
move
right,
on to
moving
the
on.
let's move on to the other news that isn't our disappointing teams right now. With Jameis Winston, the former Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback, has now signed with the New Orleans Saints on a one-year deal.
um, So one thing that I'd like to point out with this, first of all, I'm not gonna. I don't think it's a bad move by the Saints. I know some people are probably scratching their heads thinking, New Orleans, really? You know what Jameis Winston does, right?
Yeah, he throws
Um,
touchdowns, right?
right, totally. Well, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure the Saints have got more touchdowns from him than they have from Taysom Hill in
They
recent years.
have there was a stat. I think it was Jameis Winston's thrown 10 touchdowns to Saints players, while Taysom Hill's thrown 7.
Oh, jeez. Anyway, all because all of his touchdowns are interceptions. That's ghastly. Anyway, um, Winston called his experience with the Saints a Harvard education for quarterbacks. And it's understandable because he will be there with future Hall of Famer Drew Brees. And he will essentially be doing a little bit of I guess you could say, a QB competition for the future between him and Taysom Hill. Because Taysom Hill just got offered a huge contract, too, by the Saints. So it will be really interesting if this is Drew Brees' final year, or it's coming up very soon, if they want to hang on to Winston, or if it really will be, Taysom Hill as the quarterback of the Saints' future. Because, people had talked about, the Saints might take a quarterback in the draft. They didn't. Instead, they just signed Winston, which we'll get into that as well. But personally, I think this is probably a good move from New Orleans.
I'll agree, and like you said, we'll get more into that a little bit later.
Let's go into the main part of this episode, which is, of course, our post-draft coverage. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about every single team in the NFL and grading each team based on their draft selections, whether it was in the first, second, third, all the way to the 7th round. We're really going to be talking really about their first few selections and kind of basing it a little bit off that, though, if we're being honest. So we'll be
Because
giving.
some teams had like 15 picks, and we don't want to go through 15 picks for one team because that's going to take way too long for us to.
Exactly. So we're going to kind of go over the ones that stood out, their first few picks that really kind of gave us a little vibe of what direction each team was going. And Shane and I will be assessing grades for each team as far as how we think they did in their drafting. And then after that, we're going to be talking a little bit about their rankings, what we think the power rankings are going to be looking like in the post-draft. Which teams rose because of their draft selections and which teams plummeted because of their selections. But we will get into that after we've covered every team and we've given them a specific grade. Sound good?
Sounds great to me.
Okay. Well, we will start off with the team that started off the entire draft, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals.
And I think what didn't come as a surprise, and and we both mocked this is to happen, is that the Cincinnati Bengals drafted Joe Burrow #1 overall. That
Definitely no surprise.
Yeah, that's not really a surprise. And they also drafted T. Higgins. So with this, it's very interesting because right now the Bengals are still kind of with Dalton. Do you personally think that Burrow's going to sit behind Dalton, or do you think they're going to immediately throw Burrow in and let him go in guns blazing?
You know what? I honestly don't want to answer that. And because, I'm looking at it from two different perspectives. Joe Burrow, the Bengals could do what the Cardinals did, last season. They just threw Kyler Murray right into it and hoped for the best, which, it turned out to be okay. And then you look at on the other side of that, the Washington Redskins, they had Case Keenum playing that position for quite a while before they finally decided, okay, let's put Dwayne Haskins in that position. I think they did the same thing with Eli Manning and Daniel Jones as well. The difference is, though, is Kyler Murray's actually doing pretty well. We're not really seeing that from Daniel Jones and Dwayne Haskins. So maybe at this point, maybe the smart idea is to put Joe Burrow in. I don't know. But if they are going to, then they need to trade Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I would say they are planning to use Joe Burrow and gain him in. They need to figure out what's going on with Dalton. Either have him there as just the backup, but most likely try to shop him somewhere else.
Either that or have him be a bit more of a mentor to Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I can see a little bit of both. Honestly, it's gonna be hard to say on what exactly is going to happen down in Cincinnati.
Definitely. And as we mentioned before, we've talked about how we're only really mentioning the first and second picks of every specific team and just kind of going off of that. So as we mentioned, we have Joe Burrow, we have T. Higgins, which T. Higgins is a wide receiver, right? I believe he is.
Yep, he's a wide receiver out of Clemson.
Exactly. Who's also a very talented player as well. Going off of this, Shane, what grade would you give the Bengals?
You know, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue against Joe Burrow and everything that he made. I would say that they've definitely made a lot of improvements from where they need to. They have somebody to pair against AJ Green with T. Higgins coming off. They have the replacement for Andy Dalton with Joe Burrow. I would say if they don't get an A, it's gonna be like an A minus.
Oh, I actually had an A minus in mind for them. I think it was a good I think it was a good overall selection for the Bengals. I think they did a good job as far as their drafting goes, and they definitely deserve an A of some kind. In my mind, it's an A minus. But um again, we don't know if that's going to shake anything up or really change anything regarding the actual playing out of the season. But as far as the draft goes, I give him an A minus.
And as we've seen in the past, sometimes when they get graded like an A plus, the team ends up plummeting more so than they did the previous season. So it will definitely be interesting to see how the Bengals fare. Uh, I really hope there's not another man on the on his rooftop waiting for the Bengals to win again.
Oh yeah, well, you never know. It could be better certainly with Joe Burrow than it was with Andy Dalton and Ryan Finley as the two QBs under center. But that's just my opinion. I
Yeah. Oh gosh, I felt bad for that man. Anyways, um, yeah.
think that covers it for the Bengals.
Yep.
Um,
Nothing else to really go off of that.
our the next one, of course, would be the Washington Redskins, who drafted Chase Young, who was not really a surprise as far as being the second overall pick. Who'd be a good addition to their defensive line. And then another one they selected was Antonio Gibson, who's a wide receiver out of Memphis, I believe.
Running back out of Memphis.
Running back. Oh, excuse me.
You're
Okay.
good. You're good. I have everyone's draft selections pulled up.
Oh, actually, it says so. From what I've gathered, he's actually a running back and wide receiver.
Oh, he's got a little hybrid going on.
So, well, if this is the case, based off of what we've seen with Chase Young and in this case Antonio Gibson, Shane, what would you grade the Redskins?
You know, this is hard for me to say because they got Ron Rivera coming in as a coach. They still have Dwayne Haskins coming in. They're improving their defense strongly with Chase Young, and maybe Antonio Gibson can pull like a little bit of a Case Keenum, not be the quarterback necessarily, but be that running back, wide receiver, dual option, kind of like how Taysom Hill is running with the Saints, being a quarterback, receiver, and running back option. Maybe he can double up and be a smaller Swiss Army knife for them.
It's possible. If I'm going to be honest, as far as my grading goes, when I've looked at some of the Redskins draft selections, I really don't see any. I really don't see much promise of any of them, with the exception of Chase Young. And for that, just for where it goes for me, I am giving the Washington Redskins a C plus.
A C plus. Wow, I feel like that's pretty low.
You'll come to see this as I go throughout the rest of all these teams. And like, I'm not going to really give like super high grades. There's very few good grades that I'm going to give, and I feel like with the Redskins, looking at a solid C plus, maybe even a B minus.
My whole thing is I feel like the Redskins could have done a little bit better. That's why I'm going to kind of lean towards B minus. I was thinking B, but I'm going to throw in B minus. All right.
As far as the Redskins go,
Yep. So that moves us to the Lions.
Detroit Lions. They drafted Jeffrey Okuda as the third overall, which again was no surprise. The first three, everyone was pretty much sure who those three were going to be. And then DeAndre Swift was actually their second pick, and he is a running back out of Georgia.
Yeah, I think he was one of the higher rated running backs going into this draft.
He was. I think he was definitely one of the ones that people had their eyes on. As far as grading goes for the Lions, I almost said the Pistons. Hello, wrong sport for the city of Detroit. Wrong sport for the city of Detroit. My bad. I would, and unfortunately, I've been watching The Last Dance too with Michael Jordan. So of course now I have the Detroit Pistons on my mind. Hello, let's go football here. Hello. For my grade for the Detroit Lions, though, I feel like they did do a good job as far as their picks went. I'm giving them a B plus.
I'm going to give them an A minus because I feel like they're showing confidence with Matt Stafford coming back because, I mean, we have a lot of respect for Matt Stafford. He's done a lot of good for them. And now that they're bolstering up a lot of their defense, which I felt like, was getting scored on quite heavily and getting a little bit more help on that offensive line and some little, little bits and pieces of weapons that could potentially be starters but might sit for a year. I feel
Mhm.
like that they did an overall good draft.
I feel like they did as well. It actually makes me nervous because, of course, they play in the NFC North, and that of course means that they're playing against my Bears, which also could mean the Bears could slump to the very bottom of the rankings for the NFC North. I think a lot of that will depend though on how well their defense can perform. But Shane, if I'm being honest, Jeff Okuda, he's going to have a heyday if he's catching and getting interceptions from if Mitchell Trubisky ends up being the premier quarterback for the Bears. Because
I
that
mean,
man, yeah,
you also have Nick Foles, and he did not do any favors in Jacksonville either. So,
yeah. It'll be interesting to see. But anyway, yes, Lions, I feel like they did a pretty decent job with their drafts. I think what's going to come down to that is how well their defense performs. And also, and a lot of that will stem from Matt Patricia and how he performs as a head coach. If the Lions do not come out with a winning record this season, which to be honest, I don't think they will, I think Matt Patricia is going to be out of a job.
interesting. With that being said, do you think that the Lions may also look at Matt Stafford and be like, "You may be done as well"?
I am considering the possibility. Now, I don't want to get into this just yet, because we'll talk about this with rankings going on. But I think the Lions could possibly compete for the number one pick next year in the draft.
Okay. Well, we don't want to get too far into that, so we've given our grades for the Lions. So let's move on to, oh boy, the New York Giants.
This was weird. This was
I,
weird.
I, I remember we were watching the draft and we are like, what the heck just happened?
So, and this is of course because I was banking on they would select Jedrick Wills. You were banking that they would take Tristan Wirfs or
Tristan
someone like
Wirfs,
that.
yeah.
And they selected someone way farther down on the line than we expected, which was Andrew Thomas from Georgia. Um, which honestly, with some of the other offensive linemen that were going in the first round, I'm doing a little bit of head scratching here with the New York Giants. I'm thinking, geez, was Dave Gettleman's mask on that tight when he was up in his office there? I don't know. I will say though that Xavier McKinney, the safety, who was their next pick, was a good grab. I will say that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, their first pick grabbing Thomas. I'm not saying that Thomas will not be a good player. I'm hoping that he will be a good player because seeing all these young guys, I really want them to have a good career. But you had Tristan Wirfs and Mekhi Beton on the board still, and you didn't take either of them.
That was strange.
That was the biggest head scratcher, and I feel like that they lucked out with McKinney falling all the way down into the second round because many people expected McKinney, including us, I believe, to go like in the mid-20s to be drafted.
I had him in the teens if I remember correctly.
Yeah, like I was blown away that he fell into day 2 of the draft and went into the second round, but I feel like the Giants blew it on the first day, but hit it on that second draft pick with McKinney.
For that's why I'm going to give them a C plus. Just because I feel like Xavier McKinney's really good. They didn't completely bomb the draft, but unless Andrew Thomas proves me wrong, I don't really see the New York Giants really making that much of an impact here.
I'm gonna give them a C because I'm even looking at just like all their different pits. I feel like they just grabbed a ton of linebackers and a ton of offensive linemen. So to me, it honestly just feels like that they didn't even have that much faith in Thomas when they picked him, and then it feels like a lot of their pits were very redundant.
Yeah, and I will be honest, same situation with the Lions here, Shane. When we talk about power rankings later, the Giants might be one of those ones that I feel like could be up for the first pick next year.
Definitely. Let's move on from the New York Giants and let's go to the Miami Dolphins.
They went for it. They took Tua Tagovailoa. I've been saying his last name wrong all this time. I finally have heard it correctly. So Tua Tagovailoa as their new quarterback. They also took an Austin Jackson because they had 3 picks within the first round. But those were their first 2 that they took overall. Um, Shane, what are your thoughts on Tua?
You know, if the doctor says he's good, my biggest thing is when he got drafted, if anybody was watching that draft, they showed all of his past injuries. And me looking at that just from the outside standpoint, I was like, that boy, he may be a really good quarterback, but it kind of feels like he's a glass cannon where if he is protected, he is amazing, but the second that he gets hit, he might go down and be out.
I'm going to be honest. I'm not buying it. I don't think that was necessarily a good move by the Dolphins. And I'm giving them a C for that.
Wow.
Again, I told you I'm going to kind of be a harsh grader on this one. Usually I'm a
I
better
know.
grader, but
But weren't you the one that was predicting that the Dolphins would draft Tagovailoa to begin with?
nope, I had them taking Justin Herbert.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting. I think if he stays healthy, I think that he will be okay. But other than that, I'm kind of worried, and it's kind of obvious that like I feel like the Dolphins were obviously worried that he may get hurt as well because with their second pick, number 18 overall, they drafted an offensive tackle as well to kind of help protect him.
Which was a good move on their part, which is why I'm not like saying, "Oh, let's put him down there." That was a fail by the Dolphins, but I don't know. I'm not buying the Tua train just yet. Let's just see how it goes. I personally, we talked about how Joe Burrow should just go into it. I think the Dolphins should have Ryan Fitzpatrick play a bit before they put Tua in, if you ask me.
It's funny because before the 2019-2020 season of the NFL started, I remember that like everybody was talking about tanking for Tua. Even you were on the taking for Tua trade, and you thought that he was going to be really, really good in something in the NFL. Did that change with that big injury he had?
It certainly did, and also the ascendance of Joe Burrow.
Oh yeah, that's the Tiger King.
Yes, the Tiger King.
I felt dirty for saying that. Anyways, I'm going to give the Dolphins a B. I'm not going to give up on the Tua train quite yet. I think as long as they are able to protect him, I can see the Dolphins becoming the front runners of the AFC East in the foreseeable future.
Nice. Yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. And I think for now that probably works, Shane. You can be the good grader, I'll be the bad grader.
Good cop, bad cop.
There you go. So next up, it's the Los Angeles Chargers, who also took a quarterback. They took the Oregon product, Justin Herbert, who seems like he has a really cannon of an arm, but not much else to show. Also, in addition to that, their next pick was Kenneth Murray, who's a linebacker from Oklahoma. Um, I think the Chargers did a decent job here. I'm not saying that they completely bombed it. I would have taken Herbert over Tua. I think Kenneth Murray was a good grab. I'm interested to see how it's going to work out between who the quarterback will be, whether it's Herbert or Tyrod Taylor, or in my personal opinion, I think Cam Newton might sign with the Chargers if he can't find anything else. I'm
Really?
interested to see. I really, yeah. The reason that I'm thinking that is just because Cam Newton. A lot of experts have saying Cam Newton should sign with the Chargers, and it feels like he's kind of leaning in that direction as well. And I feel like if Cam Newton is going to play in this next season, it will be with Los Angeles or not at all.
Interesting. Okay. I'm also just looking at their draft picks right now. The Chargers did not have any picks on day two, and they had very little picks all around overall.
I wouldn't, and personally, I'm as far as the picks that they did make, that's why I'm not going to go super hard on this. I mean, I think the ones that they did make, they're decent. I'm giving the Chargers a B minus overall. It would have been great if they had more picks, but for what they have, it's acceptable.
Yeah, see, and I'm kind of in the opposite. I'm gonna say that they might have gotten an. Uh, I really want to see what Herbert's gonna do mainly, and to see if he's gonna start over Taylor. I don't think he will. I'm gonna give the Chargers a B plus, and just saying for what little that they did have, I feel like that they made the best of it.
I would agree. I think that's about it for the Chargers.
All right, so that's going to move us down to the Carolina Panthers, which I think was another shocker for us personally.
This was fun because I remember at this point, once we came to the Chargers and the Panthers, you were like a giddy little school thinking, holy cow, if the Panthers don't take Isaiah Simmons, you were thinking the Jaguars could get a steal on him.
You did too. When we were talking, you thought that too.
I was more like cheering for you because I was like, oh man, he's going to lose his mind if the Jaguars get Simmons.
Oh.
But it was at least somewhat surprising that the Carolina Panthers did follow through and they took Derek Brown from Auburn as their first pick. Derek Brown's not a bad pick. I would have taken Isaiah Simmons over Derek Brown, but at the same time, I know that the Panthers are taking a different approach as far as how to bolster their defense. That seems to be the biggest thing that they're trying to rebuild this season is their defense. You know, offense is looking somewhat decent right now. They still have Christian McCaffrey. They got Teddy Bridgewater as their quarterback, and McCaffrey can pretty much be the whole offense by himself.
McCaffrey was the whole offense by himself.
It was last season. This year, but they got to fix the defense. Derek Brown is a good acquisition. The other one they picked that we put on here was Yetur Gross-Matos. Wow, what a name! I feel like the Panthers did an okay job at doing the things that they need to do in order to make their defense better. For that, I'm giving them a B.
See, I'm actually looking at all their picks. They didn't draft a single offensive player this draft.
They went hard, man.
They went hard on the defense, and see, I'm actually gonna be the mean one on this one. I'm gonna say they get a C.
Because they didn't take any offensive players.
No. Not just because of that. Who was the biggest piece that the Panthers lost this offseason?
They lost Keckley and they lost Olsen too.
Olsen was getting up there in age, so that did hurt their tight end, especially because he was a veteran leader and had done so many good things. But I think the thing that hurt them the most is the loss of Kuechly, and the fact that not saying that Derek Brown isn't going to do well, but the fact that they passed on the potential future Kuechly, who would have done probably just as well, maybe better, maybe about the same. It blows my mind that they passed on that to grab a defensive tackle when I feel like that their D-line was already decent enough.
Obviously, it wasn't if they're going 5-11.
True, but we gotta remember, when they first started out the season, they were very, very strong, and then I feel like teams started to figure out McCaffrey a little bit and basically just started to keep an eye on McCaffrey at all times, and it started to hurt their offense more than that.
Well, that and Kyle Allen became a turnover machine.
That too.
Yeah.
Which I don't blame the defense for. I blame the offense for.
No, yeah, that's true. I just feel like they want to bolster up their defense, though. And I will at least say that they did an okay job because they selected so many defensive players. Again, I'm not saying, oh, now the Panthers are going to do so great because of this defense. I personally believe they're going to be the lowest ranked in the NFC South come the end of next season.
Oh, I agree.
But I will say, give them credit for trying. Also, do you find it funny we said their biggest losses were Kuechly and Olsen? We didn't even mention Cam Newton.
Okay, but let's be honest. It hasn't felt like Cam's been on that team for a very long time.
It's true, with all of his injuries, but we don't need to go into that.
I think the main reason I say that Olsen and Kuechly are the biggest losses is because they were the biggest leaders in the locker room.
Yeah.
And
that's how it goes. About the Arizona Cardinals next. They got a hold of the Clemson product of Isaiah Simmons, and they also got a decent offensive lineman in Josh Jones, who's from Houston. Shane, I'm actually pretty impressed with the Cardinals on this one. I think they got lucky with Simmons sliding down to them that far. I think that a lot of their products, or the picks that they took, they were good choices. This is one of the few ones, Shane, that I'm giving an A to. I'm giving the Cardinals an A.
I'm giving them an A as well. The fact that they got away with Simmons, which, by the way, I'll talk about this a little bit later, an absolute steal on the Arizona Cardinals part. I can't believe it. Simmons fell to 8, and that was heartbreaking when they grabbed him, because we were both determined that they were going to get an offensive lineman to protect Kyler Murray.
We certainly thought so.
I feel like everybody thought so. I feel like people were even thinking, even if Simmons falls to the Cardinals are going to want to protect Kyler Murray at all costs or give him another good weapon.
I guess their next pick, Josh Jones, is a good acquisition. So, I don't know. I still feel like they did a good job. Also, what is it up with Cliff Kingsbury? Ah, wow, Cliff
Cliff
Kingsbury's
Queensberry.
place. Dude, I can't even say his name. I got totally tongue tied there. Cliff Kingsbury's place that he was doing all of his draft selections from.
Oh
Like
yeah,
that's fancy.
yeah. I mean, it must be he's gotta have some kind of luck to get Simmons and to live in that giant house. Oh, I would love it.
I will say that. All right, Shane. Next, though, your Jacksonville Jaguars, who took C.J. Henderson and Kaylavon Chasen as their
Uh,
first two picks.
I want
On
to know
all,
your grade first.
um, I gave the Jaguars a C plus on this just because I feel like okay, you're not going to get a too terrible of a grade because you did address some of your defensive issues, but you didn't take into any of account your offensive issues. The fact that you could use another receiver and you could use an offensive line to protect Gardner Minshew. If you're not going to get if you're not going to get a decent offensive line, then get another quarterback so that when Minshew gets pounded, at least you have a decent backup.
Yeah. So you remember? I think people watching may remember as well. They may not. It's fine if they don't. I had talked about what I want for the Jaguars draft. Number one, in this order of if they were available, Isaiah Simmons, Jerry Jeudy, C.D. Lamb, and like the list came on like I think C.J. Henderson was like number 5 or 6 on my list. Yeah,
Hmm.
Duckmaster. I did want wide receiver. I didn't think Simmons was going to fall, and I was McKay. I was devastated that day. You like heard my soul just shatter.
Well, it's because your. I remember it was funny because your broadcast was about a minute behind mine, so you were kind of listening to my TV as it was coming up. And as soon as Goodell said Cardinals select Isaiah Simmons, you were like, "What?" You about had a heart attack.
Here's the reason why. Oh, so looking at this, I I told you when we were watching the draft, I was like, they should not grab Henderson. Florida Gator players, especially on defense, have not done well in Jacksonville, and we draft them every single year. One of the most recent failures was Taven Bryan, a defensive tackle, still on the team right now, but he's done next to nothing. CJ Henderson, yeah, he's going to fill a spot, and people will see a lot out of him, but he's also been riddled with injuries, and that's the thing that just worries me is that we got him, and I feel like the better part of the Jaguars draft came in the middle to late. We had 12 selections, but we didn't address a wide receiver until pick number 42 with Chenault, who is also injury prone. So I feel like we got a lot of injury prone players, which made me sad.
Yeah.
But I feel like we were able to walk away with we got a lot of pits where we can further assess these people and hopefully some of them will be instant starters. Like I think one talked about was you you remember the smoothie guy at the combine who made the Gatorade peanut
Oh
butter
yeah. What the
smoothie?
heck was that?
Yeah, he's a Jaguar now. He's an
Bad.
offensive lineman, but a lot of people have said that he is a really good lineman, and that even though he played in a lower division, when he went to like the Senior Bowl or something, he was playing against some of these bigger name defensive lineman players and was holding his own.
I mean, hey, if it works, it works, right?
If it works, it works. I hope so, but I'm gonna give the Jaguars like I'm gonna say a B minus for the main reason is that C.J. Henderson was number one, and that broke my heart that the Cardinals took Simmons right from underneath us.
Bummer, bummer.
It's going to just haunt me. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to be like, oh wow, Simmons is dominating. What's C.J. Henderson doing? Oh, please do better.
How about um, moving on next is the Cleveland Browns, who did take their offensive lineman as protection for Baker Mayfield with Jedrick Wills, and then Grant Delpit, the safety from LSU, who I feel like was a good steal too. Um, I really liked the Browns selections here. I'm giving them an A minus.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same ballpark as you. I'm going to give them an A minus. I feel like they just filled a lot of holes that they needed filled.
Now it just depends on whether they're still going to be able to bring it together, because we thought they're going to have an amazing team last season, and they went to a 6-10 record.
Yeah. Oh, I remember something. I said I was going to tell people about this earlier, and I forgot it, and I just remembered. So, you want to know something very, very interesting? And this is about my Jaguars. This is about my Jaguars. We're going to backtrack a little bit and talk about Isaiah Simmons.
I would love to if your mic didn't keep cutting out.
Oh, is it? Is it better now?
It still is kind of getting patchy here and there for me. I don't know.
Okay, well, let's see how this works. I'm hoping that's better. Let me check something really quick. All right. Very nice.
No singer, but you're welcome.
Very nice. So the interesting thing is there was talk that if Simmons was even there at number 9, the Jaguars would have passed on him and taken Henderson anyways.
Ooh.
Yeah. Which, when I heard that, I was like, we need to fire our front office now. Simmons. No, because you looked at Simmons, like, when Simmons was drafted, he played safety, he played linebacker, he played cornerback. Like, he was everywhere on the defense. He could play anything. I'm like, why would you not draft this man?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, though, Cleveland Browns, yes, I will say that I think they did really well. I'm going to give them an A-.
Yeah. Moving up, though, because I also want to talk about, I want to get to everyone else. I want to get to our For the Fun. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit if that's okay with you.
Yep.
Next up, New York Jets drafted Mekhi Becton, Denzel Mims. So they got a wide receiver and an offensive lineman. Not a bad pick. I'm going to give the New York Jets a B+. I think they addressed their needs that they had. Not stellar with all of them, but I think it got the job done.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give them an A-, mainly because I think that they really nailed it with their first 2 picks, and then after that it kind of started to falter a little bit, but I think that they took care of what they wanted the most.
Sure. Next, though, Las Vegas Raiders took Henry Ruggs III. I get he's really fast, but he was kind of a bit of a surprise that he went before CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy, in my opinion. And then they also took Damon Arnett, who is a cornerback. As far as the Raiders go, with the acquisitions that they had, not great, not terrible. I have a grade for the Raiders. I'm giving them a B.
You know, I'm pretty on par with you with this one. I'm going to give them a B as well. Henry Ruggs, I think, is going to be a good weapon. And then I feel like it started to fall apart slowly after Ruggs. Even with Ruggs, it fell apart a little bit.
I just pounded 2 bottles of water. I must have been thirsty.
Anyways,
right.
Let's move on from the Raiders and go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with their new quarterback, Drew Brees. They drafted Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield, which I honestly gotta say, that first pick was probably one of the best picks they could have made.
Antoine Winfield was a good pick too, if you ask me. I feel like both of them will really be a good in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers system, especially with Tom Brady there. I mean, Tristan Wirfs, come on, he's going to be the bodyguard for Tom Brady there.
Yeah, I was like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers literally drafted a big offensive lineman. They got lucky that Wirfs was still on the board at that point, and they were able to.
He almost wasn't. That's why they traded up with they traded up with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think that they're going to regret it because, like you said, they just got Brady, the biggest insurance policy probably on the board.
And then Winfield, he's a good safety. So, Buccaneers, I'm giving him an A-.
I'm going to give them an A- as well. I want to see what Tom Brady's going to do because, like we have personally talked about, I feel like he's in the decline, and even though he's got good weapons around him, I feel like it's going to come down to him specifically now.
Definitely. I could not agree more. Moving on, Indianapolis Colts drafted Michael Pittman, wide receiver out of USC. Also, Jonathan Taylor. Shane, do you have what position Jonathan Taylor played? I don't.
Running back out of Wisconsin.
Okay. So a little bit of some weapons that can be there for Philip Rivers. Colts did a good job. I'm giving him a B minus though. So it's like it's okay, but it wasn't something that knocked it out of the park.
I'm gonna give them. I'm gonna give them a B. I feel like a solid B is what is going to happen here, especially since they didn't have a single pick in the first round. I feel like they made up for it in the second round.
Right. And they do have DeForest Buckner, who can still kind of hold his own there. They got him from the 49ers.
Yeah, that could be a little bit scarier than I would like.
Yeah, they are in your division, that's for
Yep.
sure. All right, next up is the Denver Broncos, who took Jerry Jeudy, the wide receiver from Alabama, who was pretty coveted. And they also took KJ Hamler. Denver Broncos, yeah, I'm gonna give them a B minus, mostly because of the Jeudy acquisition.
Really? Why is that?
I don't know. I just feel like this, and this is just a hunch of mine. I feel like with these other ones we've talked about earlier, Henry Ruggs, he could do well, but I feel like there are other good receivers in Las Vegas, and definitely with CD Lamb, who we'll get to later. CD Lamb is going to be playing with some other really good receivers in Dallas. I feel like Jeudy is going to be the one of the three who shines the most.
Okay. Okay, so you're rating them higher because of the Jeudy pick.
I'm good. Again, it's only what I said, a B minus, right, or a B?
Yeah, B minus.
Yeah.
You said B minus.
Minus, yeah, and that's really all I'm gonna give him. So,
I'm
yeah,
I'm gonna give them a B for the main reason is that their second pick was another wide receiver, which I personally feel like are they really that hurting for that many wide receivers, or are they trying to get as many weapons as they can for Drew Lock?
well, Noah Fant, who's their tight end, is also coming into his own. So I think it is all about getting the weapons for Drew Lock and seeing how well the offense can do. Because Coach Fangio for the Broncos used to be the defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears. He knows defense. I think it's more just always focusing on, okay, well, let's rack up this offense here for someone who's not of a defensive mind. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely, but I still just question the first pick being Jeudy and the second pick immediately being another wide receiver. I feel like a different position could have been addressed there.
Well, I never really understand all of John Elway's opinion.
I
This is
don't
pretty
think
good.
anyone understands all of John Elway's opinions and thoughts.
Anyway, let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons, who drafted A.J. Terrell, who's a cornerback, and Marlon Davidson, who is defensive line, right?
Yep.
Defensive end, yep. The Falcons did what they probably should have done, which is they are building up their defense again. That's what really needs work here. With the Falcons, I'm giving them a B plus because it seems like they were focusing on what needed to be done, first things first, and then they went and got some other pretty picks after that.
I'm gonna give them an A minus mainly because I feel like that they were kind of walking away, filling all the holes that they need to fill. We talked about in the pre-draft episode where they are going to look to fill holes, and I feel like they came in with that in mind and accomplished the task.
Definitely. That's all I got to say about the Falcons. They did their job.
Now let's move on to the Dallas Cowboys.
They took CeeDee Lamb. They pretty much stole him from the Philadelphia Eagles, who probably would have taken him. Because it's not like the Cowboys are hurting for receivers. They kept Amari Cooper. They have Michael Gallup. They have a capable tight end in Blake Jarwin. They can hand Dak Prescott, if he needs to hand off the ball, he can hand it off to Ezekiel Elliott. They've got a pretty good offense there. They also took Trevon Diggs, who is Stephon Diggs' little brother, who's a very capable cornerback.
Yeah.
It's like, this feels like puke coming out of my mouth. I'm giving the Cowboys an A.
Oh, I had a feeling. The thing that scratches my head the most, it makes sense because I remember watching the draft and the commentators were like, oh, well, the Cowboys might draft CeeDee Lamb to keep a divisional rival like the Philadelphia Eagles from grabbing him a couple picks down later. I was like, oh. And as soon as they said that, I saw Jerry Jones just start chuckling in his little booth, and I'm just like, oh, they're totally getting Lamb. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with you. Those first two picks were really good steals overall by the Cowboys. I'm gonna give them an A as well, as much as I hate to do it.
Let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who thought that they were even in this draft because I didn't see them pick for the longest time, and they're not my team. But, luckily I was like, oh, wait, hello, let's not forget the Steelers here. Their first pick was Chase Claypool. Their second one was Alex Highsmith. I feel like with the Steelers, I'm giving them a B minus right now. I feel like they're getting these picks that'll work. I just don't know how effective it's going to be in the long run. I don't know if I'm going to really be able to make a sure decision on the Steelers picks until I see them in action. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely. And even Duckmaster, I remember talking to him when it was draft day. We were messaging in the Madden mobile game that we played together, and he was literally just like, "Oh, I have to wait so long." And he's even saying in chat, he's like, "Such a long time for us to get that draft pick." We gotta remember though, they traded away their first round pick for safety Minka Fitzpatrick. So with
Who has proven to be a good trade.
So for me, giving the Steelers a grade, I'm also basing it off of that trade, and I'm going to give them an A minus because I feel like that they made the best play for them personally by getting Fitzpatrick.
That I will agree with. I'm going off more of the picks that they did make in the draft, which is I'm sitting at a B minus. I'll probably give it a B instead of a B minus. And again, it's more just I'm going to have to see. I didn't really see much of these players because they came until later. So I'm going to really have to see how they perform in an NFL setting.
Yeah, and even
A lot of them. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say even Duckmaster was saying I'll take an All-Pro safety over a first-round pick any day, which I personally would as well.
It's true. I would as well because we know what Fitzpatrick is capable of, whereas not so sure just yet when it comes to these other guys.
Yeah, but Pittsburgh Steelers, I feel like overall did pretty well with their draft. Do you have anything else you want to add before we move on to the Bears?
Move on to the Bears.
The Bears.
Bears. Their first pick was Cole Kmet, a tight end out of Notre Dame, whatever.
One of the two. It depends on where you're from.
Their second pick is Jalen Johnson, cornerback out of the University of Utah, which is about an hour north of where I am right now. So. Here's my thoughts with the Bears, and of course I'm not going to take too much time on this.
Oh no, take your time. I remember draft day hearing about this during you guys grabbing your picks. Man, that was fun.
When we took Cole Kmet, I was like, okay, this is good. We've been suffering when it comes to tight ends over the past little while, but then of course it comes up. Everyone's like, well, the Bears have 10 tight ends on their roster. What the heck are they thinking? Let's be clear that probably 50%, maybe even say like 65% of those players are going to be gone by the first game of the season. And I think Cole Kmet is not going to be one of those players. I think he is a pretty good tight end who will be helpful for a cornerback like Nick Foles or Mitchell Trubisky, depending on who it is, who don't really seem to who probably shouldn't launch the ball that very far. Maybe just throw it as a check down pass to their tight end. And with a big guy like Kmet, I don't know. I feel like that was a good choice. Jalen Johnson, again, I wish the Bears had focused a bit more on offensive line on anything else. So Jalen Johnson, yeah, a good cornerback, not bad. I'm very harsh when it comes to my Chicago Bears. So for that, I am giving them a C+ for their grade, but that's just.
I feel like you guys grabbing Commit was a good job because with Foles heavily favors his tight end out of all of his options when throwing the ball. Yeah. I feel like you guys probably got one of the best tight ends, if not the best tight end in this draft. Although I will say your guys' second pick, you were not happy with because you wanted that offensive line so bad, and you guys didn't even address that till like day 3.
I'm not pleased with it. We actually did not address the offensive line until round 7. Yes, our 2 picks in round 7 were both offensive linemen, but
right after each other too.
Yes, but again, just
way too late for the offensive line.
Exactly. I'm still ticked off about that. So how about we do all of everyone here a favor and let's move on to the Rams.
Hold on. I give them a B minus. Now we can move on to the Rams.
Okay, that's right. Sorry, you didn't.
You're
Okay.
good.
Okay, so for the Rams, they also didn't have a first pick in the draft either because they got Jalen Ramsey from the Jaguars.
Yep.
Um, so their first was Cam Akers, and they also took Van Jefferson. Um, I am just gonna give. It's getting down there too. I am just gonna give the Rams a B minus because again, it feels like they should have all these good players in their system already. On paper, they should be one of the best teams there, and they're not. And so I'm just going to give them a B minus just because I don't really know how well these picks are going to help them, but I also don't know if they're going to hurt them either.
I'm gonna give them a B minus as well for the main reason it seems like that Ramsey trade hasn't worked out in the favor of the Rams. It feels like they kind of got the worst end of that trade overall.
Rams have certainly regressed, is my overall opinion of them when it comes to this past season.
Definitely.
Um, so it will be interesting to see if they can bounce back from that. But spoiler alert, when it comes to the power rankings here, if we have a chance to go over them, I would not be surprised if the Rams take the bottom of the NFC West this next year.
Okay. But let's keep moving on. Let's keep speeding this up that way we can get to the for the fun, hopefully.
Yes,
Um,
definitely.
Next we have the Philadelphia Eagles who drafted Jalen Rager and Jalen Hurts. Oh gosh, the memes of Jalen Hurts. Anyways,
I have the Eagles with a C plus. I don't know if the Jalen Hurts acquisition was really necessary, and Jalen Rager doesn't seem like he's going to be that good of one. I mean, yes, the Eagles need to be addressed with a decent wide receiver options for Carson Wentz. And yes, Carson Wentz feels like he's made out of glass, and it might be good to have a decent backup quarterback. But again, I just don't know if this really helped the Eagles in the long run. Like I said, C plus, C. That's what I'm giving them.
yeah, I give them a B minus personally.
Yeah. All right. Well, how about the Bills? They took AJ Epineza, which surprised he fell that far. And then their second pick was Zach Moss, the running back out of the University of Utah. Um, and I'm not trying to be, biased here as far as, oh, it's my hometown state or anything like that. But I think the Bills did a pretty good job when it comes to their selections. I give them a B plus.
You know, and here's the thing. I'm going to give them oh, I'm going to give them an A
All right.
for the main reason is I don't know if you saw the video, but the kicker that they drafted in Tyler Bass towards the end,
Mm-hmm.
he is a gold mine, meaning he was able to kick a field goal 50 yards away without any step or run up or anything. And they kicked another one from 60 yards away with only one step taken.
We'll just have to see how he does that with a full crowd full of people.
That's true. But I feel like the Bills got away with a lot of steals from this draft, which is why I'm going to give them an A.
Okay. Yeah. How about the New England Patriots that came up right next? They're trying to address the things that they lost in their really, really talented defense. They drafted Kyle Duggar. They took Josh Uche. I don't know how to say that. I give the Patriots a B. I feel like it was kind of weird. I didn't know what to expect from them, but I give them a B. I feel like they did okay.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm reading what Duck Master's saying. Says that, like, he was surprised that Jake Fromm was so late and was such a steal for the Bills, and they surprised that the Patriots didn't take him, honestly.
They must really be convinced that Jared Stidham can do it for them.
Yeah, I mean, if that doesn't work out, I we might actually see the Patriots dynasty completely fall, and it would be insane if they did not make it to the playoffs for like the first time in 2 decades.
I wouldn't complain about that, but
I don't think many people would. But
yeah.
overall, I think I'm gonna give them like a B minus.
Okay. About the New Orleans Saints next, drafting Cesar Ruiz and then also Zach Bond, addressing their defensive issues or the things that they want to improve on through the draft. I'm going to give the New Orleans Saints an A on this one. I think they filled in the holes. I think it's going to be good. I think those were good picks by them.
Yeah, I mean they didn't have many picks. I think they only had like 4 or 5, and I feel like they were able to get what they wanted and what they needed. So I give them an A as well.
Interesting. The next one up too is the Minnesota Vikings, who took Justin Jefferson and Jeff Gladney. This is one of the other ones that I'm also going to give an A to because the Vikings had so many draft picks, and I feel like they used them all pretty well.
Yeah, they found the replacement for when they lost Stephon Diggs in that trade, and then they got a strong cornerback in Jeff Gladney, who I think is going to do some really good stuff. I'm going to give them an A as well.
And then the Seattle Seahawks taking Jordan Brooks, Darrell Taylor. Those are the first two that they took. I give the Seahawks a B. I think they did good enough getting what they needed to get. Nothing too spectacular, but they got the job done.
Yep. I'm going to say a solid B is probably what they deserve and what they walked away with.
Houston Texans are up after that. Ross Blacklock, and then also Jonathan Greenard. I don't know with the Houston Texans. I never really want to trust Bill O'Brien's decisions these days. But I'm gonna give him a B minus.
Sorry, the Bill O'Brien comment. I think that they were able to get Ross Blacklock. I feel like that was a good play for them, be able to get a good player. Overall, I would probably say a B though.
Okay. With the Baltimore Ravens, who are the ones right after that, drafted Patrick Queen, J.K. Dobbins. I feel like the Ravens, they're taking care of the issues that they need to have addressed. Hopefully something that will get them to actually be in contention for the Super Bowl, perhaps this next season. I give them a B+ for their efforts.
I'll give them an A- because I think the Ravens are going to bounce back even stronger than before.
I would think so, and these draft picks will certainly help. Tennessee Titans drafting Isaiah Wilson, Christian Fulton. I give the Titans an A-. I think they did a pretty good job with their picks.
Yep. I hate to say it, but I'm gonna give them an A- as well, just because I feel like they deserve it. I feel like they made the good picks when they needed to. I feel like their first little bit was a little rockier. Like their first day was rocky, but after that, I feel like they were starting to kind of nail down with good players.
Yeah, I would say so for sure. This next one is so fun.
Oh gosh. This one made you happy.
As a Bears fan, this one made me so happy. Like almost crying tears of joy. The Green Bay Packers totally flopped in the draft and took another quarterback after they had been promised to give Aaron Rodgers all this help so that he could make it to another Super Bowl, but they take another quarterback to possibly replace him, and they just don't really give any answers for the Green Bay Packers. And so it gives me great pleasure to say that I give the Packers a C- for their grade.
Only a C-. Wow.
I don't have anyone here that's in a D in the D or F range.
Here's the funny thing, because with this, the Packers now have a very disgruntled Aaron Rodgers, where social media has been blowing up, where the Vikings are tweeting out like, "Hey, we're looking forward to your revenge tour." What if that revenge tour happened and came through the Chicago Bears?
Would crack me up, but also I don't think that would happen. I mean, that would just be such an awkward thing. The Rodgers has just caused Bears fans so much pain over the past little while. I don't think that would happen.
I mean, Favre did the same thing to the Vikings, but he still went with them, and it worked out. Overall, though, I'm going to give this a D+, mainly because they really pissed off Rodgers, and they basically took their most valuable player on the team and just spat in his face and told him that he's worth nothing to them.
Pretty much. It was not a good move by the Packers. I don't know if that was LaFleur basically telling Rodgers to, suck it. I don't know.
It might have been a little bit of everything. Because apparently they have not been getting along lately.
That's at least what the rumor is.
That's a rumor. Anyways, let's move on from the embarrassing one to the 49ers, who drafted Javon Kinlaw and Brandon Ayuk.
I think the 49ers did a decent enough job. I'm giving them a B+ as far as their efforts. I'm a little surprised that they would take Ayuk, that they would actually trade up to get him. I didn't think they needed him that bad. But hey, I guess they wanted a good receiver to replace Emmanuel Sanders. And I have high opinion of Brandon Ayuk.
Oh, so. I know you have very high opinion. And I feel like they also got a really good defensive tackle in Javon Kinlaw. I'm going to give them an A-.
I kind of wanted to. Yeah, I'm going to switch that from B+ to an A-.
I
think
feel like
definitely.
Go ahead.
All right, good. I was just going to say, I feel like the 49ers, I will keep them on top of the NFC West for this next season.
Okay. So let's move on to the defending Super Bowl champions in the Kansas City Chiefs.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire and then also Willie Gay Jr., I just didn't think that they were going to do what they did. I don't know if it really helps them, but I don't think it hurts them. I give them a B minus.
You know, I'm gonna give them a B plus. I feel like they're just trying to get a couple of talented players that are still there and then just move on. I feel like the Kansas City Chiefs just feel really, really solid with their team going into this upcoming season.
Yeah.
I just feel like
Yeah.
they didn't really lose anyone that they are like hurting because they lost a few key players, but nothing too major for them.
Yeah, that I will agree with. Okay. Well, then there we have it. That is the end of our draft grades. Um, and perhaps instead, we'll just probably stick with the grades instead of really going into the rankings because we can probably get into the post draft rankings another day, just trying to see how well things shake up as we get closer to the season. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I do have a potential replacement for the fun if you want to talk about this, just because we just hit 8 o'clock. We can probably go for another 10 minutes at most. But
Yeah.
hear me
Let's
out
do
on
it.
this.
Okay.
With this draft, what team do you think is going to be the most dangerous coming into the season? And what team do you think is going to start tanking for Tua? Or not tanking for Tua,
Looking for Trevor.
yeah, tanking for Trevor.
One that's going to be the most dangerous going into this season. There's a few that I have in mind. I think the Saints could look good. I think the Chiefs will definitely still be up there, as will the 49ers. The Ravens look like they have promise. Um, it's a toss up between some of those.
Okay. What about your worst? Who do you think is going to tank for Trevor?
Either the Washington Redskins, the New York Giants, or the Detroit Lions. Interestingly enough, as many people say that it'll be the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm not buying it just yet.
Thank you for not picking my team. Oh, the last I hope Trevor Lawrence has a good NFL career when he comes to the NFL. I don't if Minshew holds out this season, I think that they are going to be fine without taking Trevor. I don't think it would make much sense on their part when we have an established QB that we really like. My personal who I think is going to be the best teams. I agree with you saying the Chiefs are still going to be on top. I can see the Saints. I can see a lot of the people you said. Um, I would say one more, and it pains me to say this. Keep an eye out for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I
Right.
hate to say it, and I'm like having to swallow my pride when I say that, but keep an eye out for them because they might just surprise us this season.
Well, and Jason Garrett's gone too. They could actually do something good with Mike McCarthy now there.
Yep. Now, as for my worst, I agree with you, like with the Lions, potentially the Redskins. I'm going to throw in a few more and say the New England Patriots, maybe?
Okay.
Mainly because I think it was going to come down to is that maybe after like the first 2 or 3 games, if they are not doing well, I'm wondering if Bill will be like, nope, let's tank for Trevor. We are getting Trevor Lawrence no matter what, and he is going to be the next Tom Brady.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting thought.
The other interesting thought, and I don't think that they're going to be this bad, but you talked about how the Carolina Panthers might be the last in the NFC South earlier.
Mhm.
I can see that, but I think Teddy Bridgewater might make enough things work with Christian McCaffrey to do everything that they need. I might say that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers might finish last.
I'm not quite seeing that just yet. I think they're gonna go more like 8-8. That's my guess.
Yeah,
But
like, but hear me out. I feel that if they were to do bad, who better to groom Trevor Lawrence to be the best quarterback in the NFL than Tom Brady with all of his weapons there?
well, yeah, you got a point there.
It may not I don't think it will necessarily happen, but if it does, we could see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers returning to Super Bowl form in the next year or two.
True. Or hey, at the very least, the Bears can tank and then just offload Trubisky and Foles, and then we'll take Trevor Lawrence.
Oh my gosh, I feel like you will love Trevor Lawrence, but man, you're stuck with two QBs, which I feel like have just done nothing.
Well, Nick Foles is a Super Bowl MVP, but
Yeah, I feel, but let's look at his career before that, and it
and
was
after,
garbage. After,
yeah,
garbage. I mean, he's
he was
never
just on a special Philly team. Let's be honest.
he was on a special Philly team, which also he didn't even have to play the full season for them anyways.
It's very true.
Like I feel like most players during the season, like when they get towards the playoffs, most of them are just gassed and kind of like feeling a lot of the hits that they took in that season. I feel like Nick Foles came into that postseason more rested than anybody else.
You're probably right.
And then he immediately comes to the Jaguars and gets hit in the first quarter and goes down and is out for multiple weeks, comes back and turns over the ball like crazy.
Yeah,
So best of luck in your tanking for Trevor Conquest.
yeah, probably won't happen, but
But I think that about wraps up everything for the fans. Unless there's anything that you want to add, any other fun topics or things to take away.
No, I think that's pretty much it. I'm more excited for when we go into our for the fun coming into next week, just because I think it's going to be a really fun thing to talk about. But until then, let's just see if anything else shakes out, whether that's further trades or anything like that. I think it's going to be interesting as we get closer and closer to the start of the season.
Definitely,
Be
and
happy too.
hopefully the season starts on time. Hopefully things are starting to like clear up. Everybody's starting to slowly return to normal. So I'm hoping that NFL season will hopefully start on time.
No kidding.
But with that being said, have a nice night, everybody. Enjoy your week and stay safe. Wash your hands. Don't get too close to people because you don't want to catch the virus. But yeah, have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.